when we really inquire into what other people really are, it becomes more and more obvious that how someone appears and how I appear to myself, that appearance is made of the same conditioning. So you in this moment and the idea of me, that whole perception is being created here by me, and when I say me, I mean really by this perceptual apparatus that has no controller, really, that is operating according to beliefs that were not, no one was in control of what was believed, that just the system started believing things.
Välkommen till podden Human Change med Daniel Magnusson. Fastnar du ofta i tankar kring oro, stress och irritation? Tror du att allt beror på att det är fel på dig? Då vill jag välkomna dig till podden som guidar dig till förståelse om hur vi människor fungerar egentligen. Genom denna förståelse kan vi leva ett liv fullt av kärlek och harmoni. Ditt ljus och hopp när allt verkar mörkt och hopplöst. Så låt nu Daniel guida dig till den stillhet vi alla letar efter. Där slutstationen är välmående och glädje. Lyssna och njut.
Welcome. And now I'm starting in English. I don't know. Maybe that's because I'm having an English guest. I usually say like välkommen. Du lyssnar på Human Change med mig, Daniel Magnusson. And that in Swedish is like welcome. You're listening to me, Daniel Magnusson, and Human Change. But I'm going to continue having this conversation in English.
Okay.
I think
that's a relief for me.
I think that would be most beneficial for everyone who's listening and actually don't speak Swedish. So I'm having Clare Dimond here today, and she's an author of 8 books only. My God. Real, Free, Game, Home, Ease, Sane, Well. That are books and with one simple name, right? And now she's just released her newest book, and the book is about breakup and relationship, if I got it right. And it's not you and it's not me is the title of that one, and I really enjoyed that title. And she also has a podcast, Clare's podcast, and she runs program of helping people to see who we are, and I think that's what we're gonna explore a little bit today. So welcome, Clare. Nice to have you here.
Thank you, Daniel. So lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So just jump into the first book you released was Real.
Yeah.
And I listened to it and because I usually digest book by listening. And then you had some other ones also. What? Just explain a little bit, like what are your books focusing on?
No one's ever asked me that before. That's really nice to reflect on. So the first book, Real, I was just sort of I'd done a lot of work with Michael Neal, and I just started to get interested in non-duality and really looking at where our experience of life comes from and our experience of ourselves more to like centrally. And so that was sort of a foundational book, really. And then just topics came along to look at. So I looked at because it's really fascinating, isn't it? If we consider that really all the way that reality appears and the way our idea of what we are appears are really creations of what's been learned, what's believed, of meanings and associations and of things put together. so then I think it's really fascinating to look at certain topics from that lens. So what is work and money through that lens, and what is mental health, what's physical health, what is what is our what are we really underneath all of those beliefs and associations. So that was the last but one, but home, really looking in as much depth as I could at what doesn't change in terms of the ongoing presence of us. And then the very last one was I'd met a man and I'd been to stay with him in Spain, and he drove me back to the airport, and on the way back to the airport he was talking about his house in the UK and how he didn't he said I always thought I would move when I met someone, but I haven't met anyone yet. And I sort of went into this huge crisis of resistance at these words, and it was just like, after all my teaching, all my courses, all my podcasts, looking at how this idea of ourselves just isn't actually true, and then someone questions it like properly for me, and it evokes this sort of depth of insecurity and neediness and resistance and resentment. And so that last book was really looking at what is going on with that, when at these things in our life that are most confronting, and the places where, you know, we might think we're the freest, but actually when something comes in that really presses a deep button inside us, like really like a wound, really, what's going on, and how, and where is the freedom in that, what's it showing that will ultimately lead to a deeper space of truth, a deeper intimacy, more accountability, you know. And so that was the last one, and actually that one has probably more than any other book has sort of prompted emails into me, you know, with people saying, oh yeah, that's really interesting because this is my experience, blah 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 blah. And so yeah, I think they're just what is most interesting, I think, in that moment for me. That's where they've come from. Yeah.
And regarding the last book, then, It's Not You and It's Not Me, is it more about intimate relationship, or is it relationship in general?
It's sort of anything, really, because on the one hand it's about a breakup in an intimate relationship, but it's the principle that I'm exploring, and that principle is that the areas in our life where there is the greatest suffering and the greatest sense of separation between me and them, or me and it, those are the areas where there's the most need, there's the greatest attempt to secure ourselves through that thing, where it looks like controlling that thing or having that thing or pushing away that thing will lead to peace or happiness. And so, you know, in theory it's about intimate relationships, but it's about any relationship, and it's about any relationship with anyone or anything. We could easily be talking about money, you know, we could be talking about health, in that our career, promotions, popularity, and anything. It's really it's where life is really a mirror to a need or a shame or a fear or an insecurity within us that hasn't yet been brought to the surface fully and understood and integrated and healed. So
Mm.
that the breakup was a way in,
Yeah.
but I think the principles behind it are universal, really.
Mm. So we could actually just remove you and put it's not the money and it's not
Yes.
me, or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the promotion and it's not me.
Yeah.
And it's really saying, so it's not you and it's not me,
Yeah.
because the way you appear and the way I appear aren't the truth of us.
Mm.
And yet these moments of insecurity and confrontation, resistance and resentment are when the appearance of us looks absolutely real. But really these moments of suffering are showing, no, that's just a sort of program of perception, behavior programmed really from what's been absorbed as this body mind was growing up. But the truth of us is something way beyond that, that never changes, that isn't ever devastated by, a couple of random words in a car. The truth of us is way, way, way beyond that. And yeah, so we could put anything into that title and it would hold true.
Mm. Yeah, and that makes me just because it's about relationship, and we look into George Pransky's book, the relationship handbook, um, that was named "The Divorce is Not the Solution" or something before, but the relationship handbook is also more about couples, but is we have relationship with people in general
Mm,
all the time,
yeah,
and also ourselves, and in this case also you taking it another step to a
yeah,
new depth, I would say. It sounds like when you feel like you could put in your relationship with anything.
yes, yeah. And also I think it when we really inquire into what other people really are, it becomes more and more obvious that how someone appears and how I appear to myself, that appearance is made of the same conditioning. So you in this moment and the idea of me, that whole perception is being created here by me, and when I say me, I mean really by this perceptual apparatus that has no controller, really, that is operating according to beliefs that were not, no one was in control of what was believed, that just the system started believing things. And so I think we have to, like, the moment really we start on this exploration of thought and mind and appearance, in a way, we can't stop until we've gone all the way through to see that there actually isn't a separate you and me, that it's inseparable. The appearance of me and you are literally made of the same perception creating system. And I think that changes everything about the way relationships can be considered now. That it's not a question anymore of me finding a way to get on with you, or me setting my boundaries, or it's really, it has to begin with, like, who are you really and who am I? Let's get to the absolute truth of that, and then see where we go.
Mm. Beautiful. um yeah, bec- because it's so easy to get stuck in our own beliefs of what is true and right and wrong and so on, and also in the physical
Yeah. Yeah.
appearance of how what we see and experience in some sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the behavior.
Yeah. Because and often I really do think, and I'm sure you've seen this, because in yourself and in the people that you work with, the more powerful the mind in terms of its ability to create and its ability to conceptualize and form systems and rationalize and work things out. Often what is an enormous gift, the power of that can turn in on itself really when it's not really understood, when everything that the mind is creating looks so real, and it looks, and I think, you know, some of the people I work with, if their mind, like genius minds, but because that mind is so used to finding the answer within itself, you know, thinking hard, like really thinking, if I think hard enough, then I'll find the solution. But actually, when that superpower mind is set the task of solving the problem of the self-identity, of how do I find freedom, how do I find peace, how do I find happiness, how do I have a good relationship, and it's when it's happening on the premise that how things appear are real, and that there is a separate independent self that is doing, you know, is deciding and making everything happen. The mind can't, it goes into a loop of it's sort of hopeless. It cannot find its way out, and the more effort that goes into that, the more lost it gets. And so that incredible mental power is actually destructive. And I think one of the most astonishing aspects of this sort of conversation that we're having is that that power of mind can settle into truth, so that it's no longer trying to solve a problem that it cannot ever solve, and instead there's a recognition that it's dealing with concepts, not truth. And I think that just like is transformative, mind-blowing. Yeah, really, I mean, awesome for the people that you work with, you know, in your leadership groups and that sort of thing, to really harness the power of the intellect or creativity from truth is spectacular.
Yeah, and when we don't see that, or we when we're so stuck in the intellect and stuck in the belief that it's up to me
Mm,
to
mm,
solve, then it's like we keep digging in deeper and deeper in the hole that never gonna take us anywhere.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, because it's all coming from a premise of what that me is,
Mm,
and that me hasn't been questioned, and so everything that has been learned about the me, and often that's you know, often for all of us to a greater or lesser extent, it's coming from some form of either acute or chronic stress through our childhood, of, you know, different moments of fear or being overlooked or insecurity, or, you know, stuff at school, and so that unquestioned me that believes it's the thing that has to do all the stuff and control the stuff and find a way to have the right emotions. And in a way, it's very logical because the whole system is trying to come back to truth. It's trying to come back to what we knew before all this conditioning was acquired. So it's very logical, the seeking attempt. It's just it's sort of being done laterally rather than going deep within. It's being done at a surface level where nothing is really, the appearance of anything is just taken as objective truth. And I think the freedom for all of us is in the recognition that nothing is objective truth. There is no separate reality, and that the way all of it's appearing is a invitation to really see how it's emerging from within, and the wounds that create this sort of, the ongoing patterns, our ongoing addictions, our habits, are constantly ending up in the same sort of relationship or the same arguments with people. It's what is going on within that this is revealing. Is it seems to me that that is that ensures that a conversation like this isn't spiritual bypass. That it's actually a deeper presence to reality. It's not pushing stuff away with just some nice words. We're really being present to the real depth of us, the real truth of us.
So what have you seen then that is helpful?
Helpful?
Yeah.
For me personally, or for me
personally, to start with.
Well, that book that we were talking about, that was, intimate relationships and men in my life. It has been quite I would say that has been an example of like a sort of cyclical pattern of seeking, and at the same time that seeking is a pushing away, and so an ongoing experience really of need and insecurity and shame and unworthiness, and I see how it's led to staying in some relationships much longer than even when when it was obvious that it was not a good healthy space for either, and or behavior that didn't feel healthy or right, and so the book, in a way, the book was my therapy, I would say, in a way, of having this confrontation from someone that I really liked, that instant feeling of shame and fear and deep insecurity, and then chapter by chapter, really through the book, looking at what was real in it, what was needed, who I was, who the other person was, what my behavior was doing, and really, and so really I think it's like a sort of, that is almost like an exercise for all of us when it really feels like the ground is pulled away from underneath our feet and we sort of go into survival mood. Really, we're like, it's like, feels like death when someone, and for me it was a relationship with a man, but for another person it might be with our children or a friendship or a boss, or it's whatever these things represent. There's a lovely quote from Terence Real who says, "There's no such thing as overreaction. It's just that the things we're reacting to might no longer be there."
Mm.
And so we can see that in the things that we're so, it looks like our survival depends on, it's because of the past. It's not because we're not reacting to the reality of that person in any way. It's what they represent. And
In our reality, in some sense, then with quotations of
yes,
reality.
yeah, in our
Yeah.
reality, right, as it appears right now. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so that's been quite a huge space of inquiry, I would say, for me. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's so like we react on what we believe is true when we
Mm.
are in relationship or in situations, and like this is happening and I'm feeling this at the same time, so it must be that
Yes. Yeah.
that is creating this, because it's
Yeah.
so easy to do that connection that is not there, but we believe there's a connection.
Well, this is where I think, like, because we can get into, we're just we're feeling our thinking, that sort of thing. But in a way, the connection is absolute. The connection is there, really. It's just that the 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 thinking and the feeling are really both coming from the past. I would say it's just what's projected into this moment now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the connection is logical always. I think what the system is profoundly logical. It doesn't do stuff that doesn't make sense, really. It's just that the behavior and the reaction and the emotions, the experience are really that of a child, I would say, really, of a child that is fearful for their life in a way. Really, the things that they most depend on are looking insecure, and that's what is our experience as, maybe decades later. That's what's being provoked and triggered.
Mm. So the beliefs that we collect during our when we live,
Mm,
because it's not just not in our upbringing and when we're
yeah,
children, it's also we collecting beliefs the
all
whole
the time.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really interesting as well, because yeah, absolutely, that's what's happening. And I think what is very freeing for us all to consider is that those original experiences of life and death, um, they become the lens in a way through which the self and other people are perceived. And when none of that is questioned, and we can go through our whole lives just taking everything at appearance level, and all the time from that original wound, which forms the whole viewpoint of life now. We're just sort of re-traumatizing ourselves each time, because that original source of the lens and the perception is never understood. So it just projects out. So say for me, I'm sure part of my problems with relationships and men came, my father died when I was 10. And at that time, 1980, there was like no sort of counseling or grief therapy, like it wasn't even didn't even exist really, where we were living. And so nothing was available to help the reconciliation of that and to understand the emotions, and it just didn't exist. And so that held as a lens through which all relationships are then experienced. It's like an ongoing re-traumatizing of that original wound. It's never healed. It just continually plays out over and over and over and over again. And each time creates more evidence subconsciously. Yes, relationships are dangerous. Men you can't rely on to stay around. Or yes, you've got to do everything you can to hold on to this man in your life. And we can see how it just keeps repeating until we come into a conversation like this one, and someone says, whoa, hold on. Everything is a mirror. Everything is pointing you back to getting really still with that deep discomfort, with those feelings of life and death, and stay there. Stop the seeking, stop the trying to control, stop the numbing, the distracting, and stay still with this right now, and see what's going on here. And then that's it. That's all you have to do. Yeah.
So, like, coming back to what is true and what is constant.
Yes. And I think an important element of that is in experiencing the feelings of death, almost, because they're here to be had. And when we spend our lives trying to avoid having them, which we really do, I think, we're conditioned to believe we should be always having peaceful thoughts and a clear state of mind. But so when we're not feeling the emotions that we think are okay to feel, and we're feeling the emotions that look really threatening, we're doing everything we can to escape. And I don't know if there's a good book, Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler. That was a good one to
No, I haven't.
to digest audibly.
Yeah.
And they in it they talk about a $3 trillion industry to get rid of the self, to silence the mind, to really escape from whatever is going on right now. And the value of this conversation is it says no more escaping. We're just going to have these sensations, have this discomfort, have this feeling like you're going to die, be in it. And by being in it, there's a chance for the projection to end, and just what's here to be seen instead. And I think for me that's the definition of enlightenment, really, is moment by moment of resistance and suffering, the revelation of what's true. And in that process, the body heals, the mind settles back into its truth, and the whole system starts aligning really with sanity and presence and love, and that's our ultimate freedom.
What comes to me is like, because I guess when we explore, because as you say, we want to numb, we want to escape, we want to, like, I don't want to feel it because it's devastating and horrible and really really uncomfortable, all these kind of feelings. It doesn't matter if it's like just a small friction. I guess we start to see that there's actually nothing to escape from.
Yeah. That's so lovely, Daniel. And I love how you say it in your lovely voice. Yes. Yeah. It's so simple, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really nothing. There's nothing there.
yeah.
And I think that the difference between that in the way you've just described it and an exercise of distraction or bypass is that realization of nothing there is profoundly holistic. The whole, every cell in the body resets with that new reality. It's a complete um a total revelation rather than an intellectual exercise of it's just my thinking, or there's no self, no, like it can so easily be a sort of mind game of avoidance,
Mm,
really. But that stillness that you like just expressed in the simplicity of your words, it's total. um and and then things change. Like, it's ironic, the thing that we were desperate to have is now here, and it doesn't have like it's obvious it can't complete anything or make anything whole or guarantee anything. It's just it become I in my courses we call it clean. It's like clean now. It's just the thing. That's all it is. It doesn't represent anything.
mm.
um yeah, that I think that's the definition of change. It's changed
Yeah.
from within.
Yeah. Well, it needs to to happen there
Yeah.
inside. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
And for me, what comes up is like there is nothing to fear, but we fear it. But when we feel it and be with it and really stay with it, it disappears, and then suddenly it was nothing to fear.
Mm. Do you
And
have you had examples of that in your life?
yeah, both emotions, like uh, anxiety, not heavy anxiety, but like worrying and like how would it be, and I had an experience, and I, Alan E. Flood, who wrote the book Perfect Misfortune, I had him on, and I talked about that in the podcast, and he said, "Yeah, you should call it the Ludvika moment," because I was in a small city here in Sweden, and the story behind it is that this is like the second week since Russia invaded um, Ukraine, and I was lying in a hotel room with my family next to me, my wife, and two kids, one kid in the bed and one in a bunk bed. Uh, a- and and I don't really remember if I woke up or if I had problems to fall asleep, but I was thinking a lot about the war, what would happen if Russia attacks Sweden, and I was waiting for a decision from the government if I needed to pay back money from a furlough, and it was like quite a lot of money because according to them I was not entitled to have the money, so I needed maybe to pay them back. It went well. I kept the
Yes.
money, and I was entitled. So
Yeah.
anyway, so and I'm laying there and creating all this story and starting feeling anxious and worrying like, oh, should we go to Norway? It's quite close. If they, and it was like, and then suddenly just dawned on me like, hey, but nothing of this is
Mm.
happening now. Nothing.
Mm. Mm.
Everything outside of me just is. It just is. It is
Mm.
what it is. And like,
Mm.
but the way I experience it is is coming from me, and creating it, and creating the suffering in that moment, and then more or less like it vanished.
Mm. Ah, that's
And
a lovely example.
and it was not me forcing it.
Mm.
um and I didn't need like, yeah, I need to, yeah, be in it, and yeah, it was like, huh, like an insight, really
Mm.
pointing me in the pointing to what is true in some
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then it's like, yeah, huh, I could fall asleep, and so, and it made an impact, how I could see how easy is for us to get sidetracked, and start worrying about what is uncertain,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when actually everything is uncertain.
Yeah, 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 everything.
Truly is. We just believe it isn't.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
love that example because it doesn't preclude planning or
no.
looking ahead. It just is that it just makes it clear that the image, the sort of believed future cannot be true because it's just this now.
Mm,
And this future projection that is causing such fear and anxiety, as though it's happening, like we're experiencing that in the body right now as though it's actually happening. That's an insanity of the mind, isn't it? That's
mm,
um a loop of belief and resistance that is creating tremendous stress and in fact an exit from reality.
mm,
That which is what we were talking about earlier, like and so the mind tries to solve those problems and it can't. It can't solve these things that it thinks are real.
mm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's an endless loop in some sense to
Mm.
solve it. It's like, I heard like the expression that you can never solve a problem by thinking of the problem, because then it's like you're stuck thinking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the problem.
Yeah,
So you need to shift the focus, and looking for solutions, maybe, or looking what can solve, and then suddenly you have the opportunity to actually
yeah,
solve the problem.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. That's really good. And also, I think one of the things we've just been looking at in our online course at the moment is how when things get very tightly defined. And there's this lovely quote from Einstein of if I had an hour to solve a problem that my life depended on, I'd spend the first 50 minutes defining the question or defining the problem, and then 10 minutes solving it because it would already be solved in the definition. So
mm,
that the more tightly it comes, we're sort of pulling it into reality, and all the stuff that has got nothing to do with it, that is just made up, that is projection, imagination, falls away. And there's just this thing like, how do I do XYZ now? Oh right, that's how I do it. It's sort of the solution comes into the problem because it's so clearly defined and so sane and so completely related to actual reality that um things become very, very straightforward
mm,
from that space. It's a totally different use of the mind.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I would say this has been a very good use of around 45 minutes. Good use of time.
That's a
Lovely.
very, very, very smooth, Daniel.
Yeah. Yeah. I really really enjoy the conversation, and also um, how you explain it, and calmly pointing in some way, like when we coming back, and dare, I guess, dare to feel.
Yeah. 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 And
Mm.
I love how I go on for ages and you sum up something in 5 words. That it's like, oh yeah, that's really clear. That's what
Uh,
it is. Yeah, you've
uh,
got a very lovely just way of bringing everything to like the purest essence. It's very
uh,
lovely. Yeah, thank
uh,
you.
thank you for that. So if someone, of course, listen to the podcast, and look into the books, and but if someone would like to come and contact you, and explore more, or what's a good
Yeah.
way?
Well, we've got a membership program that is closed at the moment, but it's opening again in at the end of December to start off in January with a really cool program looking at the cycles of belief and behavior and reaction that the mind gets stuck into. And so that's, yeah, so if anyone's interested in that, to email me through the website claredimond.com, or my email address is claire@claredimond.com. Yeah, I'd love to hear from people if anyone wants to join that.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and a deep dive, a little bit more than what we explored today, and using the group, I guess,
yeah, yeah.
the group. How what's the size of the group?
Well, there's 130 or so people in the
Uh,
membership at the moment,
yeah.
and you can join and leave anytime. But each month there's either an online course for 30 days, or there's a
Ah,
subliminal, or a workshop, or a webinar or something. And each one is looking at what we've been talking about from different, different ways in, either through
ah,
different topics, or um, different approaches. So yeah, I really love it. It's
ah.
such a total privilege to hang out and see, all where freedom is really. That is really the question, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
So is it more like you can be there, and then you pick the cherries that you really like?
Yeah.
I would like to have that
Yeah,
one.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's often from a question that comes in that you think, God, I don't even, like, where would we go with that? What, and so the things that are really a conundrum, I think, are the ones that are most interesting to
Mm-hmm.
see where, like, how can the threads be pulled apart so that something very simple emerges. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Mm. Interesting. So I will, of course, put the links in the show notes to your website, and also pointing out the books and the podcast, of course. So thank you very much, Claire, for today. It's been a lovely, lovely use of time.
Oh, thank you, Daniel. I've
Yeah,
really enjoyed it. Loved meeting you properly, and having a chat with you about this. It's been wonderful.
uh,
Thank you.
thank you. So if you would like to say some last words to the listeners, what would that be?
Mm. I would say, ha use life as an ongoing exploration of what's true, and find the teachers, or the books, the podcasts, the videos, whatever it is that most resonate with you in terms of sort of unveiling and clearing away the stuff that is just sort of collateral, really, that's got nothing to do with the absolute essence of who you are and what life is. And that, make that your purpose of living, and everything else comes from that.
Tack för att du har lyssnat på det här avsnittet. Är det så att du uppskattar den här podcasten så får du självklart dela den vidare till dem du tänker kan ha ett behov av att lyssna på den. Det finns också en möjlighet för dig att boka in sig på ett kostnadsfritt coachingsamtal med mig. Det finns inga förbehåll att du måste ha tankar om att bli coachad, utan du kanske har en frågeställning bara så här: det här skulle vara intressant att bolla med Daniel. Så kan jag hjälpa dig på något sätt så gör jag det mer än gärna. Skicka frågan till mig på daniel@humanchange.se. På hemsidan hittar du även videokursen Nyckeln till stressfrihet. Det är en videokurs som jag tillsammans med Angelica Almqvist har skapat, och det är ett program då för dig som vill ha ett stressfriare liv. Och några vanliga effekter som man kan se efter den här är då minskad stress, oro, frustration och psykisk ohälsa, ett ökat lugn, välbefinnande, sinnesro med mera. Tack!